So I think we had a fantastic mixture, I think, today in terms of the presentations. And it's over to the colleagues here. Can I just say, in terms of our audience today, we have the former members and we have our guests from ULB and elsewhere, and I would like to be able to incorporate whomsoever in terms of the discussion. I would ask you, you've been very patient and listened now for quite a while. I would ask you to be as brief as possible so we can take as many questions and comments as possible. And my idea now is that we will take 25 or 30 minutes for comment and conversation from the floor, and I would come back for some closing observations from the panellists, and then to close finally with our Secretary General. Now, on the list here, Elizabeth is keeping her eye open. I think we've got you there, Mr. Elliott, so you can put your hand down. Let me start with Mrs. Brown-Moser. Mr. Porto is here.
It's behind the person behind Mr. Porto. Do you know his name?
Please.
Yeah, we heard a very interesting lecture, as I said. I was about 20 years ago in Spain asked to refer about our dual system we have got in Germany, where 80% of all youth coming from normal schools are going to, with a contract with firms for 3 years, also to professional education to get better knowledge. And even the about 30% of our high school leavers make the same contract with a firm to get a skilled banker or skilled trader, or they have wonderful possibilities afterwards. Even the immigrants take this sort of opportunity to get with this contract in 3 years as apprenticeship to this sort of qualification, because they can lead afterwards their whole life on can be based on this sort of professional knowledge, and the sense is that they get to some sort of master in the economic or in the professional way, as we have since the Middle Ages in Germany. The mastership is that based on this apprentice. And the apprentices were going over whole Europe in the old days, of continental Europe, to get a new master, to learn more. And this sort of mobility is not bad. I was very happy when I had in my youth the possibility to go to foreign countries, to Belgium, and to study here and to get a contract. I was really very, very proud of this. And so I can understand that you'd call it exile. They go for some years. They have the opportunity to learn in another country, to learn other studies and languages. It's our system in Europe is based, the currency union is based on workers' mobility. Otherwise, we can't sustain the currency union. Yeah, the capital should be mobile and the workers should be mobile, comparatively with USA. So I think we have opportunities and not should so much complain over things which had the Italy and Ireland and everyone had this sort of problems in former days.
Okay, I'll ask the panelists just to make note, and you're welcome to respond along the way. The interesting strength in Germany, to which you referred, of the apprenticeship model and so on, relates to the very strong Mittelstand in Germany and a very strong tradition, which is not necessarily to do with structures elsewhere so easy, but I think it's an interesting point. Also, just a small observation on the question of choice of language, exile, emigration, opportunity. I think a lot of time it comes down to whether you feel there is a pull. I want to go away to improve myself, or a push. I have no choice and I must go. So I think a lot of time it's what is the motivation. The pull is brilliant. I want to go to develop myself. The push is tough because you feel force is obliging you to move. Now, can I go to your left for the next comment, please? Yes, you have the floor, and I will work around the different. Yes, please.
President, I don't have any specific question to make, just a few remarks to make with regard to the objective of education. I don't think that we have to limit that objective to training people for jobs. We have to combine that with educating people in a way so that to become better human beings. And it reminds me what Marcus Aurelius said when he was asked, but you are an emperor, why are you reading, why are you studying? And he said, because I want to become a right man. And this is another objective, parallel to the one you have said, Director General, to find job. And about the relationship between the old generation and the young generation. I'm not between those who believe that there is a clash. There is indeed standing by each side so that to promote the society and to make it more just and more fair and more better for all generations. And about Spain, of course, it doesn't refer specifically to Spain, but we see today a trend by young people saying, let the old people go home just to create jobs for us. This is a wrong approach, and the young people have to understand that. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Giovanna Corda.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman, and well done for organising this on such an important subject. I'd like to comment on what Mr. Meres has said. You talked at length about education, and it was very interesting. Now, before being a Member of Parliament, I was a teacher in vocational technical training, so I'm familiar with the subject. I taught young people between the ages of 16 and 20. As I'm sure you know, I also used to teach management. That management training helps people to get jobs. But these were young people who would go into manual work. But you've said that, unfortunately, these manual jobs are not respected or valued, and I think we need to change that attitude. Now, when the young people used to come to my classes, it was quite a difficult management training. They didn't have the necessary basic skills. So I think we need to go back to elementary skills, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Because nowadays you have young people who have to carry out some kind of analysis, but it was very difficult for me to understand exactly what they meant. So if we want our society in the future to overcome these difficulties, if I'm to invest a lot of money, and you've talked about money, you need to invest in the basics. It's in primary school that we should invest. Because obviously once you've acquired the basics, then you can move on. But if you don't have the basics, it's like a house with no foundation that will crumble. Mr. Meres, I was very interested in what you said. You talked about education first and foremost, but for me there's also culture that's an important element. Education and culture are the two pillars which can support our society. Now, this is a subject close to my heart, and although I don't teach anymore, I'm a cultural attaché from the province of Hainaut. So I try to open these young people's minds to culture. In the local authority of Boussole, we have a contemporary art museum from the French community. I'm sure you're familiar with it. So opening these young people's minds to culture, giving them access to museums where they wouldn't dream of setting foot. I do this because I'm also deputy to the mayor. So not only do I help these young people in technical vocational studies, But I also work with very young children, 4 and 5 years old, and give them access to culture. And that's because Mons in 2015 is going to be a European capital of culture. So, Mr. Meres, I think you're really thinking on the right lines, and what you've said is very close to my heart. Thank you.
See, Michael Elliott, please.
Yes, my comments are directed particularly to Mr. Meres. When I came to the Parliament in 1984, the education and training programmes were just beginning, and I was delighted to spend most of my time here in the Parliament working on discussions of these steadily improving and expanding programmes, and I was co-author of this Parliament's report on the Socrates programme. So I'm delighted to see they're still expanding. I wish the Commission well with its new proposal for Erasmus for All, and I'm delighted that so many universities, colleges and schools in my own area are participating in these programmes, my own area being that of West London. Only last week I went through the EP to Campus programme to the University of Donetsk in the Ukraine, and the students there are very keen, as is the university as a whole, to participate in the exchange programmes. They're a Jean Monnet Centre of Excellence. They are involved with the Erasmus Mundus programme and so on. But I must say that there was great concern expressed in Ukraine, as there is in most countries, about this appalling situation of unemployment for young people. In my own country, although employment in the population as a whole is only around 8%, amongst young people it's 15 to 20%, and this is masked by a huge area of underemployment, of young people taking part-time and poorly paid jobs because there's nothing else available. And in particular, the scandal that's emerged publicly recently of increasing numbers of young people being pressed into unpaid internships because there's nothing else for them. That's something that's become very controversial in my own country, and but rightly so. You could say that underemployment is, in a way, although many of these people are underemployed in part-time jobs and so on, would like to be in full-time employment, you could say positively it's a way of sharing the problem of austerity. But the age balance is wrong. It is older people on the whole who would like to be in part-time employment as they near the age where they perhaps want to give up work altogether. But it is young people who remain in part-time employment when they are the ones who most need full-time employment, because given the huge university debts which many young people in Britain leave their undergraduate courses with, sometimes as much as 30 or 40,000 UK pounds, added to the high cost of housing, presents an enormous problem for young people. So I really do hope that we can concentrate efforts on this. And as I wish you well with Erasmus for All. We know that the European Commission is being asked to cut back by heads of government, but let us hope that these programmes, which are so valuable for our future generations, do not suffer from financial restriction. My final comment, if I may please, is to say that back in the 60s and 70s, many of us realised that new technologies and social changes would reduce job opportunities in many areas. But there was a positive attitude that this would lead to shorter working hours, to greater leisure, and indeed an expansion of employment in the leisure sector. But it hasn't happened. What we have is some people working harder than ever they did, and other people not being able to get a job at all. It's a crazy kind of way of running society. Let's hope we can move to a better solution in the future.
Thank you, Michael, for that comment. Gordon Adam, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a very interesting morning. One of the things that I did for a number of years after I retired from the Parliament was to be involved with an organisation which was trying to get the young unemployed into work. Many of them the NEETs that we talk about. And quite frankly, and I come from the region of highest unemployment in England, in the northeast of England, trying to solve this problem was virtually impossible. An awful lot of the young people, to be frank, bordered on unemployability. And I came to the conclusion that we were dealing with the wrong problem. And I have to say that I don't think we've looked at what I consider to be the most important problem. I don't think we've discussed this morning. I think our colleague over there came closest to it when she talked about the importance of primary schools. I think we've got to go even earlier than that and think to the preschool years and even to the period before the child is actually born. Because it is in this area, it's the most important area of childhood development that I think our society fails most. That is the perception that I have, and I would take some persuading that I'm wrong.
Well, I think you had a very interesting dimension there, Gordon, because one of the issues when you look at this sometimes you talked about unemployability is sometimes you meet, and I'm sure that's what you're thinking of in a way, you meet households where you have multi-generational unemployment, and where nobody had the experience of work, and where the inheritance, what I might say the cultural inheritance, is not to visit the library, not to visit the museum, not to have books at home and so on, because it simply wasn't there. And at that level, it's a much more deeply embedded phenomenon than perhaps some of the elements, indeed, that we have touched on. Domingo Sagara, please.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief couple of questions. Unemployment and solving unemployment, we have to work on job supply and demand. Here we're looking mainly at supply. And I agree that vocational training is something that our countries haven't focused enough on. I think the Commission has to undertake many more initiatives, partly to encourage governments in different member states to change their systems, and also to try to coordinate, like we've done with Bologna for universities, to encourage to get for these half of young people who are in vocational training. And we also need some kind of initiative on participation of retired people in social life. Spain is an example of this, where there's been a lot of early retirement in their 50s, 60, 65 years old. Very qualified people who now just kind of do a bit of sport and that's it. And I don't think there's a good system for their education, for their skills to go back to the world of work and to go back to the social arena. What's also very important is teacher training or training for trainers. In Spain, for instance, there aren't that many people who speak English. And so training of people, training the trainers is going to be very important for the country and for Europe. And also within the different systems, we have to encourage support for the Erasmus system. Often there aren't enough places to meet all of the requests made by students. And this would do much more to help more Europe than just simple declarations and statements. And now we have the problem of young people who are very qualified, who aren't finding jobs. So we need change in industrial policy and also in the research and development technology programs in the European Union. We're losing ground to other economies. We need to have companies that will ensure that jobs are actually created, otherwise the crisis will never be solved.